Hi, Patsy. Thank you for asking me about the families that I know that are living in Latin America during the pandemic. You asked me, how do you say pandemic in Spanish? And it's pandemia. Um, Coronavirus is, or COVID-19 is what people, is the way people refer to the pandemic. So, as you know, I am Jenny Ballard, a professor of Spanish at Center College, where I've been teaching for 16 years. And um, after I was a student at Center College and graduated in 1991, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Costa Rica. And so I've had a lifelong connection with Costa Rica. My children's father is Costa Rican. My children have a dual nationality, dual citizenship between Costa Rica and the United States. So we're in contact in my family with people in Costa Rica every day, both for my job, where I've taken students to my Peace Corps site since 2006, and to other places in Costa Rica that are outside of my Peace Corps site many times. I'm in Costa Rica every year, sometimes multiple times per year. And so it's a place where I'm very familiar with the way some of the families are responding. So people in my Peace Corps site, which is a rural town on the border between Panama and Costa Rica, are they're social distancing most of the time, but they're also going to work. And they've described situations to me where um, most people are doing everything they can to protect elderly people who are more prone to contracting, or more prone to not contracting, but but having symptoms and life-threatening illness related to the virus. And so that people in my Peace Corps site are very aware of that, conscientious of that, and doing what they can to make sure that they protect vulnerable parts of the town. They People in my Peace Corps site mentioned to me that there have been a couple of um, situations that made them really nervous, and that is that right after Holy Week, Semana Santa, which was a week where people didn't have where everything was closed, people left their homes to go the Monday after Holy Week, the Monday after Easter, to go to the bank. And there were lines outside of the bank, and inside of the bank there was kind of a rush on the bank in Ciudad Neyli, which is the town that is closest to my Peace Corps site. They also mentioned that sometimes there's a lot of anxiety about whether or not they're going to get enough food, and so people go all at once to the grocery store, which is still permitted in Costa Rica. I've talked to people in La Cuesta, which is the town where my children's father is from, and they're going to work as usual. So they don't have the laws about essential and non-essential employees. Family members of ours work in factories, work in the trucking industry, work in a hardware store, in a tractor supply store, and they just go to their job. They are doing their best at home. They wash their hands a little more. They're trying to keep people they don't know out of their home, but the it's not taken as seriously. We talk to people in other parts of Costa Rica, in particular in San Ramon, which is one of the places where our students travel during the summers. I talk to them every other day usually, and they are also making sure that elderly people are taken care of, and that people don't come into their houses. But these are all three of the places that I mentioned are very rural places, and I'm sure the situation is different in the city centers. So about 50% of the population lives in the central urban part of Costa Rica that has the major towns of San Jose, Alajuela, Cartago, Heredia. They're all in one large urban center, and 50% of the population lives there. Costa Rica has only had 6 deaths related to the coronavirus, and the total population of Costa Rica is similar to the population of Kentucky. One big difference is that they have socialized medicine, a national healthcare system, which is usually pretty good. Okay, so that's Costa Rica. Now, as you know, I have just returned from being a Fulbright in Colombia. I was living in Colombia from July 20th to January 20th. So July 20th, 2019 to January 2020. And there I was working at a university in Barranquilla. And so I'm in contact regularly every day with people in Barranquilla for 2 reasons. One, my students at Center have they have a partner in Colombia that is a university student in the school where we have an exchange. It's called a COIL class, a collaborative online international learning class. So students in my class do a couple of activities during the semester to get to know aspects of Colombian culture. And this semester wasn't an exception. And when the pandemic started and everyone, when classes stopped at Center, they also stopped at Uninorte. We both had a break at around the same time, and then after the break, our students started communicating with each other again. So I'm in contact with the professors that run that side of the exchange there. I'm also in contact with, I teach with one of my students who's a graduating senior, Caleb Campbell. I teach a class called Science Writing for professors and PhD students at La Universidad de Caldas in Manizales. And these are agriculture students that work with plantains, tomatoes, avocados, and they study parasites and nematodes in birds. So these are mostly plant pathologists and then another biologist that studies avian epidemics. And so we are regularly in contact with them. We're continuing to teach the course. They all have articles that are in some phase of on their way to getting published, and my student and I work with getting the articles written in English, helping with translation, and also we teach a general science writing course every Tuesday. So we have continued to do that, and because of that course, I was prepared a little better for going online than I would have been had I not been teaching that course at a distance with my student ahead of time. So I'm in contact with them. I know that they are in their homes. They are working from home, which for writers, on the one hand is beneficial, but for this kind of scientists that have huge labs, have their samples, have their seedlings that they've been growing and working with for months and in some cases years. Now they've lost their access to labs. They've lost their student workers that were watering and taking care of their plants. And so some of them are going to lose their research. Manizales is a town of 160,000 people, and it had a very extreme lockdown. So in the same way that so Barranquilla and all of Colombia have a very different experience from what they have in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, there is a lot more like what is happening here in Kentucky. In Colombia, they have like I mentioned yesterday, they have just come out in 2016. They signed a peace agreement that ended a 60-year civil war. And so they are a population that is um, used to the government controlling movement to protect and to provide for more security for the population. So in Colombia, they have what I guess you would call a lockdown order, which means that people are not allowed to leave their homes at all. And it is policed, sometimes by drones, sometimes by police officers. The only exception is essential workers, and that's very limited to people that provide either medical care or transportation for medical workers, or um, people that work in grocery stores. So there have been about 200 deaths in Colombia, coronavirus, COVID-19 deaths, and that's a population of 50 million people. So 50 million Colombians, 200 deaths so far. The people in, so I'm regularly in contact also with a couple other groups in Barranquilla. My students and I dance with Zumba instructors, and so we are in Zoom video dance classes at night. I dance every night of the week and usually a couple times a day. So I usually dance about 2 times a day. And I dance with Colombians and then with one Mexican instructor. And my students have starting last Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and tonight they'll be dancing with me. So about five students on average, and most of these are students who are in my first year humanities course. And some of these students are students that I have known for many, many years. So a student who graduated from Center in, wow, maybe 2014, 12, 14? Yeah, 2012, who is dancing with me as well. Anyway, so the situation in Colombia is it's much more highly regulated. They also have a national healthcare system, and it has the same kinds of problems maybe that the Mexican national healthcare system has. I wouldn't say it's as strong as the Costa Rican healthcare system. Okay, so speaking of Mexico, um, I'm in contact every day with people in Mexico. My best friend is Claudia Chapa, who you know is the coordinator of the Merida program. Claudia and I talk every day, usually several times a day, and so I've been following really closely with what has happened in Mexico. Mexico has, I think, maybe 600 deaths. The population of Mexico is 112 million people. So a larger population and a higher number of deaths, but not nearly the number of deaths that we have here. Not even, that's like a day in New York. So, so what Claudia has explained to me is that social distancing has been in place for about a month, and people that are still do go out on the streets. They still do go to grocery stores, but social distancing is really encouraged. And Claudia, for instance, has switched to telemedicine for anything. There's a lawnmower that is getting ready to come, but something that, hold on, let me pause. So what I wanted to tell you yesterday was that I'm in touch with people in Cuba. I talk to people usually in Havana and in Santiago de Cuba, and they are under stay-at-home regulations, and they have a similar system where only a few people go out of the house to get food and go back in. But what I said, what I think is very interesting is that the Cubans are very worried about us. And the reason I think that is ironic is because I think this would be a really important time to consider lifting the embargo against against Cuba, to make sure that they are getting the right kind of food, the right kind of medical supplies, so that this doesn't hit them in a disproportionately hard way. Okay, so if you have any follow-up questions, then please feel free to let me know. Like I said, I'm in contact with a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for that.